So it's beginning to densify. And during the sun, a very interesting phenomenon happens. The human beings in this epoch now, the beings that were human in Saturn, have now moved up to the slot where now they would be angels. And the beings who are now archangels during our phase today, who are the human beings here, the archangels, spirits of fire, and they then incarnate. Well, before that happens, the one other detail you need is the creation of the etheric body, where we descend down from the spirits of will to the spirits of wisdom. They have, in the meanwhile, they're next down in the hierarchy from will, they have evolved up a notch that's enabled them now to sacrifice their substance. So they pour their substance out as wisdom, and that's the etheric body. So then the etheric body interlaces these cosmic eggs of warmth and begins to perfuse it. And then you go down the hierarchy again, and everyone comes in and contributes what they have to contribute. The spirits of form step in and they stabilize this thing, and so on. You go down the hierarchies until you get to the archangels, the spirits of fire, who then inhabit this thing. And so they're human in that sense, in that they're sort of inside these cosmic warmth eggs. But then an interesting thing happens. These warmth eggs hatch. And when they hatch, an etheric sun is born, lights up. These are the spirits of fire. And the whole thing is made up out of the hatching of these warmth eggs, rapidly hatching. And these archangels, they're called the spirits of fire because they're associated with luminosity. Again, we have the light shineth in the darkness, but now it's lighting up cosmic space within the spiritual plane, not the physical. And the whole thing is illuminated. And this strange process goes on where this thing is undergoing a kind of breathing process. And he says, when these archangels inhale, the sun goes dark. And they exhale, and it lights up again. They inhale, and it goes dark. While this is going on, I told you this got weirder and weirder. While this is going on, the cherubim come in with the zodiacal signs. They sort of surround this with the ecliptic. And they receive the light rays. And they kind of, when the sun goes dark, they emanate these light essences back in accordance with the animal archetypes. They go down into the core of the sun, and the birth of the animal forms takes place, the group egos of the animals. They imprint this into this invisible sun. So now we have this thing getting the Platonic ideas, what in Plotinus would be the nous, the cosmic mind, for all the forms that will come. So we're working, this whole thing would correspond to that phase, the nous, the development of the divine mind. And that's the central event in this old sun epoch. And then the whole thing finishes up with the creation at the end with at the end of Saturn we had the creation. Not only do we have the physical body, remember, but at the end of it you had the creation of the seed for the spirit body. And then this finishes up, you have the creation of the etheric body, and the etheric body finishes up with the seed for the spirit, the life spirit, rather. So the seed is planted for that. And that's really the work that's done in those two epochs. Now, moving along to the moon epoch, things get considerably more complicated. Within the moon epoch, we get a further densification that takes place. And this densification is, again, cosmic beings acting on this and shrinking this down to about the level of where the orbit of Mars would be. This is a old moon. So we shrink this down to about where Mars would be. And sort of pressures. And what happens is, after this recapitulation of Saturn and the recapitulation of Sun, now the next hierarchy down from will, wisdom, motion, the spirits of motion are the next down, they have evolved up now to a point where they're able to sacrifice their spiritual substance and create the astral body. So they interweave the physical and etheric body, and it sort of looks like this. It has almost like the shape of that, the pear shape of that thing, where they have the sort of lower physical body down here, and this is all etheric up here. And this schism will be important, as we'll see in a moment, between man's lower nature and his sort of higher, more spiritual nature. So the spirits of motion work on the astral body. This thing densifies to about the orbit of Mars. And then what you get is the densification to water. And this becomes a problem. Because water now is, can we turn up the air a little bit? Because water now is such that we've achieved a level of densification. A new substance has come in, which is so dense for these spiritual beings. We're dealing with incredibly refined spiritual beings. And they can work with the warmth, okay, they can work with the air, but they can't deal with the water. So what happens is, we get the first cosmic schism. And the whole thing splits. And you get the formation then of a central sun and what's called old moon orbiting around this central sun. And the beings who now comprise this central sun are the beings associated with warmth and air. They've withdrawn because they don't want anything to do with this watery stuff that's emerging on this moon. What he's calling old moon, it's really Earth plus moon, but we'll call it moon. And it's orbiting from about this where Mars is. So we have these two planetary, and this one has the warmth, air, and it also has water. It doesn't have Earth yet. It doesn't have the solids within it. So now we have these little beings living within this, and we have this opposition between these cosmic beings who have withdrawn to the sphere of the sun, intensely spiritual beings, and we have these other cosmic beings who have remained behind on Earth with man. And they've rebelled now against these cosmic beings on the sun. They don't want anything to do with them. They want to live their own life. So what they do is try to retreat from the sun, and as they move away from the sun, they set this thing in orbit, and it starts orbiting around the sun. Their attempt to get away from the higher beings, the powers that live within the sun. And meanwhile, all this is going on, and water is densifying, and the lower kingdoms are coming into being. The sort of the Earth is covered with this viscous, sort of watery stuff that's this kind of jelly-like. It's not mineral yet, but it's a kind of a cross between the plant and the mineral world. But within that are densifying these sort of half animal beings that are sort of densifying within that. And the human at this time is sort of half animal, half spiritual being, because that schism we mentioned now takes place within the human being, and you get this upper chalice-shaped, light-filled half, and this lower fish-like amphibian half. That is a recapitulation of this schism here. The upper half is worked on by spiritual beings radiating from the sun, and they continue perfecting it, refining it, working on the astral body, which has come in now. And these lower beings that are still on the moon begin to work on man's lower nature, this amphibian fish-like nature, and they work on the sexual organs, the reproductive cycle, which I like because in Kundalini Yoga, the second chakra that's associated with the genitals is linked with the moon. And so we have that sort of pulled in here. So we get this very primordial, swampy state of existence. Now the other thing that happens is we get, as a result of this schism between these two planetary bodies, we get the origins of the sleeping and waking cycle, which is still, however, insufficiently disentangled from the dying and reviving cycle. So what happens is, during the daytime, the human beings they're living within these bodies, and as they move toward the night side of the planet, they sort of have this pictorial dream-like consciousness, because now they have astral bodies and they can dream. So they have this pictorial dreaming consciousness during the night side away from the sun. And they begin this activity where they start to get a sense of selfhood, a sense of independence from the cosmos, a sense of independence from the cosmic beings. But then when the planet revolves around onto the day side toward the sun, then the astral body pulls out of these physical bodies and sort of unites itself with the cosmic sun beings and becomes saturated with the higher forces of the higher beings that live within the sun. Then as it spins around back toward the night side, these beings come back in and inhabit their bodies again. So you get this sort of miniaturization of sleeping, waking, and dying and reviving, and this whole process is going on. And that's the primary thing that happens until